And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We're talking the Belgian Grand Prix Fallout, all the news with Lewis Hamilton, the reasons why he could not get past a certain Alexander Albon. Add to that, Nico Rosberg becoming a legend status on Sky F1 and arguably around the world. And that rain issue, the delayed start, and why it was so controversial. We've got a lot of different opinions about that as well. So, speak to you on the other side of this. Okay, admit it, I thought this was mildly amusing. This is from everyone. Who would win? A multi-billion dollar business that produces the peaks of motorsport designs and engineering masterclass, or water? Well, in fact, it's water that defeated the multi-billion dollar business that produces the peaks of motorsport designs and engineering masterclass. Yeah, link in the description. So this was Nico Rosberg on the rain bit, which we'll get into Nico Rosberg a bit later, but I thought this was quite an interesting point he made. Bear with me, here we go.
Conditions possible, and wanted to postpone the start and was coming up with all kinds of stories that even behind the safety car you can't see anything, etc. And then you had the craziest of them all, which is then Max Verstappen saying, I don't care, I just want to go racing. I don't even need to see where I'm going. Let's just go racing. It's just purely...
I mean, it was like Lando Norris was like, no, we can't start. Obviously, he had the most to lose. The lose he did to Oscar Piastri in the end. And people like Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen were like, let's go racing. I kind of fall into I do kind of fall into their camp. I mean, someone's posted here on Twitter. Please remember, if 11 world titles and 170 wins say you can race in the rain, you can race in the in the rain. The only drivers who insisted that the FIA started the race in extremely wet conditions at the start, Hamilton and Verstappen. Now, let's be fair, when it started, it wasn't extremely wet. The issue was, and to a certain extent, I can understand the race director, because as we know, people have lost their lives at Spa. And coming out of our race, you really couldn't see anything. That's what George Russell also came out and said. You can't see anything after Rouge. You know, you can't race. It's not sensible at all. Yeah, if any of you looked at the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, yeah, okay, no one died, but there were lots of crashes, particularly at the beginning. Having said that, I do think the race could have got underway way earlier than it really did, and it made the whole Formula One, the multi-billion dollar business, look like an absolute farce. Even insurance people are now having to go, look, racing in the rain and snow at Spa, it can be done. I mean, as you can see here, yeah, it absolutely can be done. You could say that their cars are slightly safer, maybe. But there we go. So, Jeremy Clarkson also got in on the act of this rain. As we know, the race was delayed by 80 minutes due to heavy rain. Yeah, heavy-ish, if I'm honest. It eventually got underway under the safety car for 3 laps, and they didn't even want to do a standing start, which was ridiculous. But there we go. Jeremy Clarkson came out on Twitter and said, "Dear God in heaven, what is the race director at Spa doing?" Which I think I'd like to say at least half, if not more, of the F1 audience were potentially thinking that. Clarkson is no stranger to the world of F1, though, as we know, and I completely don't blame him. But George Russell explained that while the drivers usually love racing in the rain, he wasn't happy to race in the wet conditions. He said, when you're doing over 200 miles an hour out of a rouge, which you're not, I don't think, doing 200 miles over 200 miles per hour. Rouge, I don't think you are, but you literally cannot see anything. You may as well have a blindfold on. It isn't racing, it's just stupidity. You can see the lights, you can see more than a blindfold on, but I understand the hyperbole from George Russell. I still think they could have raced, not in that heavy rain, but they could have put the race at least half an hour, 45 minutes earlier, surely. So that's the opinion. Comment below, let us know what you think. Now, speaking of Mercedes has apparently called a meeting at its Brackley factory today with both of its drivers to figure out what's gone wrong with the W16. I mean, only a few races ago that George Russell won the Canadian Grand Prix. And the motorsport.com suggesting that Toto Wolff is the man that is going to get the least night's sleep. And they're a reason that what they're saying, and I wanted to share this article with you, that Wolff had his reasons for fast tracking his protege, Kimi Antonelli, but has he pushed too hard too soon? So they put, there's obviously a lot to admire about Toto Wolff, his openness, etc. Whether it's his time as a driving instructor at the A1 ring, battling financial problems, or childhood memories of his father's battle with cancer and early death, he doesn't shy away from sharing the difficulties. Now, speaking to Rosberg in a podcast on the 2016 champion, launched not long after finishing his F1 career, Wolff opened up about some of his childhood traumas. At the age of 12, he and his younger sister were dismissed from their private school in Vienna due to their, that must have been horrible, due to their mother's inability to pay. The tram back home, he said, was a 45-minute journey to explain to a 9 or 10-year-old girl why she had to leave class and why we had to go home early, and these things sit very deep in me, he added. What does this mean, though, to the overall article? Well, we'll get into that in a bit. He said, I think everybody that is successful, above average, whatever success means, there is some kind of drive behind it, or driver behind it. That driver can be you trying to overcompensate for something, which could be an inferiority complex. All of these things have a very low grade or high grade on part of your personality. Running an F1 team, they're saying, may not compare to this. But, and here we get into Kimi Antonelli, the Italian protege of Wolff is clearly going through a rough patch, as we know. He started off well, for example, that awesome drive at Australia where he qualified badly. And the project of mentoring him, it says, must hold special significance for Toto. Antonelli isn't just any Mercedes junior after all. Wolff has known him since he was 12. That's a similar age to Toto Wolff was when life started to get hard, and it was largely his decision to fast track him. Leaving Antonelli with trauma surely wasn't part of the original plan when he decided to put Kimi in the seat, vacated by none other than a 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, which, to be fair, must have been a lot of pressure anyway. So Antonelli isn't just a teenager. As we know, he's a professional athlete. He's already had really, really big success, a big name coming into Mercedes. And I think if you were to say you were a bit disappointed or underwhelmed by Kimi Antonelli, given the hype, I think you'd probably have a point. Yeah, he's finished his exams at school. He's now dealing with the pressure, more pressure than most 80s, only 18, remember, handling the weight of being labelled the next superstar across the world, while going head-to-head with the guy that outperformed another superstar in the guise of George Russell is not exactly going to be easy. And this season was supposed to showcase his outstanding abilities. For example, that pole in Miami, brilliant. But he struggled in Formula 2. That was kind of blamed on the team and the car. Okay. But now he's struggling here, isn't he? So it would have been right to expect him to conquer. It wouldn't have been right to expect him to conquer F1 overnight. But the problem is he's taking the place of Lewis Hamilton, who nearly won the championship in his rookie year, albeit with a very good car, if not the best car. But then he beat the best driver at the time as well. Yes, they finished even on points, but on count back, Lewis won. So is that what we're comparing him to, which is unfair, because I think Lewis was more ready and older at the time. But they're saying those flashes of brilliance that we've seen with Kimi Antonelli have been few and far between. The Miami sprint pole was hugely impressive, as were his Melbourne drive and the Canada podium. Yes, but for the most part, his maiden year in F1 has been far more challenging than expected, and the most worrying part is the trajectory, which, instead of showing progress, seems to be going in the opposite direction. I do agree with that, but the car seems to be going in the opposite direction as well. You only need to look at arguably the MVP of this year, I think, George Russell, to see that. So Antonelli's season, European season, not his overall season, they're saying, has been dreadful. The Italian teenager has failed to score points on tracks where he was expected to perform better. And these are tracks he knows. Yeah, absolutely. He's been on these circuits before, even in an F1 car, thanks to, obviously, the testing that Mercedes gave. The Imola weekend perhaps was just too overwhelming. Canada did deliver that first ever podium. It proved to be an outlier, though. They're saying both geographically, yeah, wasn't in Europe and in terms of performance. In Belgium, he was somewhat invisible. He was. A spin in sprint quali left in P20, and he ended up P18 in the main qualifying. Having said that, so did a certain 7-time world champion that he replaced. So I don't think we need to criticise Kimi Antonelli that much just yet. And they're saying, obviously, comparing him to George Russell in points, but in pure pace continues to grow. On Saturday, Antonelli offered more insight, and he said, and I think this is quite telling, he said, since the European season, I've been struggling to find confidence with the car, and I feel like I've taken a step backwards. He said to the media, after arriving in, the media zone where all the drivers are, and perhaps it's even harder when you're labelled the next big thing. And Lewis Hamilton even went into his motorhome and had a talk with him, which has kind of been confirmed by Kimi Antonelli. And he said himself, it's difficult. It's a difficult moment for me because I feel I've no confidence in pushing heat spin. Yesterday I tried to push a bit too much and then I spun, and that kind of hurt my confidence even more. With the way I'm driving, I'm just increasing the problem. Maybe he's overdriving. I remember John O'Lacey said, to be quick, you have to be slow, which sounded weird at the time. But Martin Brundle, this is all the way back in 97, I believe at the French Grand Prix, on the grid in Magny-Cours. And Brundle said, yeah, it sounds a bit weird, but it seems that he needs to just take a step back and not overdrive. You know, when you try too hard, that's when your mistakes happen. I mean, look how chilled Oscar Piastri is most of the time. So let's now move on to how the awesomeness of Nico Rosberg. On Horner's sacking, now you're quiet, he says to Verstappen. We'll get into that in a bit. On Bottas's future in F1, new contract with Cadillac, and on Norris's battery issue, he said to Zach Brown that could have cost him the win today. I mean, this guy is savage, but we love him. I love him. I think Sky should have him every weekend. And if they ban him from the grid walk, no, when Martin Brundle's not doing a race, they need to get this guy to do the grid walk. No SHITs are absolutely given. Here's the interview with you. It's the 17 seconds with a certain Jos Verstappen.
Last year you said Horner needs to go because you said Horner needs to go last year because he's going to destroy the team.
A year ago.
So
It's different. I have nothing to say, so it's fine.
now you're quiet.
It's fine.
You're quiet now.
I'm always quiet.
No, you're not.
Last year you said Horner needs to go.
Last year you said Horner needs to go. You guys are out a year ago, it's fine.
A year ago.
So
Awkward.
I have nothing to say, so
He's got nothing to say now.
quiet. You're quiet now.
I'm always quiet.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're quiet now. I'm always quiet. So let's run down exactly what he said before we begin to laugh. What Nico Rosberg said to Jos Verstappen. So, as we know, Jos Verstappen's faced scrutiny from Rosberg regarding Christian Horner's dismissal from Red Bull Racing. The Verstappens, particularly Jos, have been linked as to one of the many reasons why Horner may have been sacked. And speaking to the media, Rosberg questioned Verstappen's previous stance. He said, last year, you said Horner needed to go. Jos Verstappen responded to Rosberg's inquiry, indicating a change in perspective over time. That was 1.5 years ago. It's different. I've nothing to say. It's fine. Rosberg pressed further, highlighting Verstappen's current silence on the matter. He said, now you're quiet. He humorously replied to his observation, I'm always quiet. Martin Brundle also engaged Jos Verstappen about the direction following Horner's exit. Verstappen expressed sentiment. Well, they decided to change, so I'm fine with everything. So as long as it works, and I think that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant. As we know, 1 year ago, the Verstappen camp, Max Verstappen's dad, said Horner has to go now. He's going to destroy the team. Do you think that played a role now? Verstappen said to Red Bull, either Horner goes or we go to Mercedes. Awkward. Brundle agreed with Rosberg's assessment, noting Jos Verstappen's significant influence within the team. Yeah, I think there's a point there, and absolutely well done to Nico Rosberg. So, last but not least, Lewis Hamilton's radio message reveals the critical Belgian Grand Prix fuel situation. Is this the reason he couldn't attack Alexander Albon? Well, Hamilton tried to attack him, but told his race engineer he's got no fuel, and later revealed his SF25 was underfueled for the higher downforce wing. Now, after a retro qualifying session, he kind of started in the pits. So, you know, he said, I can't attack because I've got no fuel. Heavy rain fell. Ferrari not only switched Hamilton to a higher downforce trim, but they also introduced a new power unit. We had this delayed start, began behind the safety car, which led for 4 laps before the drivers were cleared. Hamilton immediately made up positions in the wet, passing 5 drivers. And the gamble, he was the first driver, very brave, to swap to slicks on lap 12, and he gained further. Now he's asked to lift and coast before the halfway point of the 44-lap Grand Prix. Hamilton struggled to get close to Alex Albon. It's hard to get close on the straight. He said, we still need to lift and coast. Hamilton was like, yeah, I know. And Adami said, we need it still a long way to go. And mate, Hamilton said, I can't attack because I've got no fuel, mate. Can I keep pushing or not? And he was pretty much told no. So Ferrari again. I mean, this was hidden really from like some of the main talking points at the end of the race. But yeah, bit of a joke really there, Ferrari again. But well done to Charles Leclerc for getting that podium. But it spreads a bit of light on as to why Lewis Hamilton did not get Alexander Albon, because I thought that, you know, a lot of people would have thought, well, he's in a Ferrari and it's Albon, as good as Albon, and he's a Williams. But there we go. Anyway, if you made it to the end, give us a subscribe. If you've already subscribed, hit that like button. that will make us smile again very much. Or if you're subscribed, hit that like button as well. Comment below, let us know what you think about some of the stuff we said. For example, is Nico Rosberg now a legend? And should they have started that race early? I think the only answer for that is yes. But anyway, I digress. Thank you very much for watching. Speak to you soon. But above all else, stay safe.